and blue. They're cyan, yellow, and magenta.
Okay.
Right? And here's the proof of that. Why does your printer not have, your color printer at home does not have red in it? It has yellow. And it has magenta. I'm going to do this demo with acrylics because some people were telling me when I would do this demo, it's like, well, that's because you're doing it with transparent colors, but if you're using real colors like acrylics and oils, that doesn't work. But, so, magenta, first of all, that beautiful pink color, you can't make that by diluting red, right? If you take red and you dilute it, what do you get? You get light red, right? That's different than magenta. Right? That is hiding nowhere in that. Turns out there's nothing you can add to magenta to turn it to red to make it magenta. But here's the really weird thing. If I take this magenta and I bring it over here into yellow, what color is that?
Red.
That's red. We just mixed red with a toothbrush, right? And the same can be done with watercolors. If you take magenta and same thing can be done with pastels, the same thing can be done with colored pencils.
Excellent.
Isn't that weird?
That's awesome.
That's crazy. So, if you can mix it,
It can't be primary.
it's not primary. Red is not a primary color. Right? So,
Max has an intense question.
oh yes.
Well, if you can make red with some of the printer colors, then how can you make all the other ones?
So,
All the other colors?
that's an excellent question. So your printer only has cyan, yellow, magenta, and black.
Yeah, how did they make all the colors with those?
Let's start playing with those. All right? So what I'm going to do is put my toothbrush down.
What is cyan? Is that
Cyan is this weird color. This sort of, like if you describe this color here, how would you describe that?
Cyan.
Well,
Okay, it's cyan.
Yeah.
But without using the word cyan.
Blue essentially.
It's a blue.
but it's not.
That's
It's not.
It's a
Dark
green. It's a greeny, bluey thing kind of going on.
green,
Right?
aqua.
Aqua. People often use kind of aqua,
Aquamarine?
and so you think that you take blue and you add green to it, you can make that. Turns out
Teal?
you can't. All right, we can do that demo, but for saving time, I'm not going to try to prove to you that you can't make that. Instead, I'm going to do what Pax was talking about, saying, so how's your printer making all these other crazy colors? First, let me just show you one other thing, a couple other problems you have, especially places where you get into tons of problems with the old system. With the old system, you can make beautiful oranges. You can take red and yellow and you can make a really nice orange. But the places where it would totally crash and burn would be when you would take your blue and your red and try to make a violet with them.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
I
You get
tried
these.
that before. That's really annoying.
You get like this bruise color, right? You get this kind of that. And people will go, well, that's purple. Okay, I guess. But it's not violet. Similarly, when you're mixing a green, you take your blue and we'll take our yellow over here. We'll say, well, no, hey, oh, that works. That's green.
That's olive green.
Exactly. Exactly. Thank you. That's a dull olive green. That is not a bright, vivid green. Well, maybe add more yellow to it. No, it's just still, it's a dull. You see, that's pretty bright. Not when you compare it with what you're about to see.
People usually expect green like this.
Yeah. So
which
yeah, how,
never comes out right.
it never comes out like that. So how do you get that green, which is interestingly called phthalo yellow green? All right, check this out. I'm going to start with magenta. If you don't have magenta in your palette, you need it. You need it. All right, there is, I'm going to make this little arc of magenta. Now, on one side of that, magenta meets yellow.
No.
And where they meet and they play a little bit, they make a nice orange, don't they? And then they get a little bit more intimate, and it's a deeper orange. And then they really start to play and dance, and it turns red. Interesting. Now, let's go the other direction. And I'm going to take cyan, and I'm going to introduce it over here. When these two get together, what do they make?
A little bit darker cyan.
What color is that?
Blue.
Blue.
That's blue. You take this, you bring it over here, you make blue. Now, if I add more magenta into that, you're absolutely right. I'm going to get into purples. And not just purples, I'm going to get into some rather lovely purples. Clean purples. Compare this purple with that purple.
Yeah.
Right?
Magenta plus cyan plus more magenta.
It's
is
just a
going
lot
to
of
give-
magenta.
Yeah, it's a continuum. You first run into blue, and then you get into purple, and then you get into magenta.
So that's your color wheel.
And then let's get these two together and see what happens when these start to play together. Holy smoke!
That's beautiful.
That's where it's been hiding.
That's beautiful.
All right, and then you compare those. So you've got that kind of green. You've got that kind of green.
And you added cyan to that yellow.
Cyan and yellow.
Yes.
Cyan.
We knew that blue and green made blue and yellow made green. Now we've just put that together with cyan, and we've got bright, clear, vivid greens. So vivid color wheel, as opposed to
Mud.
as opposed to mud.
How do you spell cyan?
Is it C-Y-A-N?
Yes.
C-Y-A-N. Yes, Max.
Well, I have a question. So, people usually think red is like the beginning of the color wheel, just because they think like that like magenta or purple is more related, to this than red is. So they think red's the beginning of the color wheel, but I'm wondering if, since magenta can combine with all those colors, if magenta is actually the beginning, or if there's anything in between those two.
That's a really fun way to think about it. One thing that's neat about this is it's a wheel, right? So you can start on this anywhere you want. But if you can start with the yellow, the magenta, or the cyan. Those three colors allow you to mix everything else. So those are your three primary colors. And with those three, you get to mix everybody else. And so everybody else is a spin-off of that. And some people will say, well, why do you say like the blue thing is wrong? Let's just sort of redefine blue as cyan.
Yeah, because that's more indigo. Because people think it's like green, blue, indigo, violet instead of cyan, blue, violet.
Yep. Or this. If I dilute this a little bit here, that's sort of we've got a little ultramarine blue action going on here. Blue is a useful color. When we see blue, we're usually talking about something that's blue, right? We want to have terms that mean these colors. If we had specific, look at this side of the color wheel here. Violet, magenta, I've got red, I've got orange, I've got yellow. Up around here, I've got a whole bunch of terms to describe this continuum of color over here on this side. We come around to the other side, and we have blue and green, right? And blue and why is it that we have terms for all of these things that are so different from each other, but we don't have terms that differentiate that from that? Right. That's just a flaw of our vocabulary. And also, this is the only part of the color wheel where we're really kind of actively exploring before. I think it's really useful to have more terms to describe these things, and not just yellow-green, right? For now, we just have to call this a yellow-green.
Chartreuse.
And a green. So what I find useful is having the term blue mean blue. That's a useful word. So let's keep blue meaning blue. Cyan, if when we look at cyan, we have to say that's kind of a greenish blue. We have to use some modifiers in there. Then realize, oh, actually cyan isn't a greenish blue. Cyan is actually cyan. And blue is a magenta-ish cyan. So blue is the thing which should be modified. And so we shouldn't try to describe the primary color using the terms of things that are secondary to that. So cyan is a really useful term. So keep cyan being cyan. And just go to town mixing all the bright colors you want. If you want muted colors, all you have to do is bring all three primaries together at the same place. So for instance, if I wanted to mix something that was like that muted purple color right there, using these three primary colors, if I got my magenta together and it had a party with my cyan, right, and it's now a bright, vivid purple, what do I add to it to bring it into that?
Yellow.
I take a little bit of my yellow. So I'm going to take a little bit of my yellow. Wonder how much. We'll find out. And look at that. I've just sort of muddied it down. And I can muddy it to be any of these other sorts of things. So here's my suggestion for you. When you're doing fine kind of mixing this and this together to match a color, use your use the real primaries. Right? Anytime you're putting in red to change a color, you're actually taking some amount of yellow and some amount of magenta into something and mixing both of those in together. The amount of each of those has already been pre-described by the person who made that red. So you keep control of the reins of your color mixing. So mix in with a little bit of magenta or a little bit of yellow, right? Or a little bit of both if you want to. But by adding them one at a time, you're able to control the proportions of those things.
Do the watercolor tubes call themselves cyan?
Unfortunately, no. Thank you for coming, sir.
Thank you. Sorry we have to run off.
Oh, no worries. No, I know I went over this time.
Get something.
So, unfortunately, the names of them are confused. For instance, this thing that I'm calling cyan, the name on the tube of paint, it will say phthalo blue. Right?
But that's the one that's staining.
Yep, and it's staining. And the manganese blue hue is also a pretty good cyan that's not staining, but it won't really go as dark. But you want to recognize cyan when you see it. So start looking for that. Keep your eye on the blog. If you want to come to the watercolor kit making party. I want to also let folks know, if this is your first time here, we have these meetings once a month, and you're welcome to enjoy it. It is all supported by donations. If you're able to donate, I've got a can over here and encourage people to do so. Or if you'd like to make a larger donation, you can donate online, and it's all tax deductible. So thank you very much. Thank you for coming. And I want to encourage you to give a crack at playing with watercolor, should you choose to do so. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Doc.